Good morning once again, my brothers and sisters at Living Hope Community Church and Iglesia Esperanza Viviente. Today we find ourselves in Deuteronomy chapter 21, and I just want to say thank you again for your participation in this ministry. And I just want you to see as we go through the book of Deuteronomy that God continues to lay out various responses to hypothetical situations, but these are situations that the community was likely to encounter. So God is laying parameters for his people and how he wants his society to be ordered. They call it civilization. It's not just going to be the Wild West where everybody does whatever they want. It's going to be ordered, structured, commanded, led by God as they enter this new era of living in the land God promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So when we get to chapter 21, verse 1, here comes a hypothetical. If a man is found slain, slain would imply a man would be found who had been murdered, right? He didn't just fall over with a heart attack, he was killed. Lying in a field in the land the Lord your God has given you to possess, and it is not known who killed him. So now we have an unsolved murder, and we don't have enough facts. Of course, there's no DNA evidence. There's no crime investigation group that's going to be able to have so much scientific capability as we would have today. You don't know who killed him. Your elders and your judges shall go out. They shall measure the distance from the body. Measure the distance from the body to neighboring towns. All right? Where's the body been placed that has been murdered in relationship to the surrounding towns? Then the elders of the town nearest the body. So now the closest town to the body is the one that takes jurisdiction over the process. But the elders of the town nearest the body shall take a heifer that has never been worked and has never worn a yoke, and lead her down to a valley that has not been plowed or planted, and where there is a flowing stream. Very specific, isn't it? Very specific about where to take this heifer. And there in the valley, they are to do what? Break the heifer's neck. In other words, we're going to murder the heifer in this specific location, led by the villagers that were closest, the elders of the village that were closest to the man that was murdered. Very specific instruction. And what's going to happen if we do that? Well, the priests, the sons of Levi, shall step forward, for the Lord your God has chosen them to minister and to pronounce blessings in the name of the Lord and to decide all cases of dispute and assault. So just notice that the priests are acting as sort of arbiters or judges of the various civil situations that occur based on the Lord's putting them in that position. So they step forward. Then all the elders of the town nearest the body shall wash their hands over the heifer. So we're having a washing ceremony over this dead heifer whose neck was broken in the valley. What is all this symbolizing? Well, and they shall declare, our hands did not shed this blood, nor did our eyes see it done. So, what are we doing here? We're admitting that we have an unsolved murder. We don't know how this happened, but we obviously have a dead body. We know something happened. What are we doing? We're killing this heifer as prescribed by the Lord. Why? Well, here's the request in verse 8. Accept this atonement for your people Israel, whom you have redeemed, O Lord, and do not hold your people guilty of the blood of an innocent man, and the bloodshed will be atoned for. So what's happening here? God is providing his community a way to acknowledge the murder, acknowledge the fact that it's unsolved, but also go before the Lord himself to not be held accountable before God for the bloodshed of the one murdered. Just step back from all this procedure for a second and think about how precious life is to God. Every human being created in the image of God. Every human being who is murdered, for instance, in this case, is important to God. The people do not want the judgment of God to fall on them. Do not hold your people guilty, right? We don't want to be held responsible before you, God, for the murder of this person. We've gone through the procedures that you've prescribed. We don't know who did it. Okay, the bloodshed will be atoned for. God will not punish the murder. He will not give the punishment to the village or the people that were conducting this prescribed procedure, because there's been a death to atone for the death of the heifer, and they will be released from accountability. That's how precious it is to God. Wow, very interesting about the heart of God. So you will purge from yourselves the guilt of shedding innocent blood, right? It's not going to be on you. The guilt of it won't be on you if you go through this procedure that has just now been put in place, since you have done what is right in the eyes of the Lord. All right, that's the point. The investigation, the remedy, the result. There it is. Now, verse 10, we move on to a different scenario. When you go to war against your enemies, and the Lord your God delivers them into your hands. So now we're talking about war. And when you take captives, now we're talking about capturing people as we conquer them in war. If you notice among the captives a beautiful woman, and you're attracted to her, you may take her as your wife. Note that not everybody is killed in these raids, and so, okay, here's a woman. Instead of killing her, you decide to bring her home. Bring her into your home and have her shave her head and trim her nails. It was common practice, from what I've read, that when a people group knew they were going to be conquered, many of the women would dress up to become as appealing as possible to perhaps avoid death. Anyway, so in this scenario, put aside the clothes she was wearing when captured. So we're shaving her head, we're trimming her nails, we're putting aside her clothes after she has lived in your house and mourned her father and mother for a full month. In other words, don't touch her, don't marry her, don't do anything. Just give her a month to make the adjustment. I guess that's really not that much time, but nonetheless, that's the prescription. Then you may go to her and be your husband, and she shall be your wife. If that's the desire you have, I guess God says go ahead. And if you are not pleased with her, let her go wherever she wishes. All right? If you don't marry her, or I guess if you do marry her and then decide not to be married to her anymore, she's free to go. You must not sell her or treat her as a slave, since you have dishonored her. Okay, so once brought into this relationship, the status of this woman is no longer a captive who's enslaved, but now she's a woman that has been part of the community and has to have the respect to be let go and completely freed if the relationship doesn't work out. If a man has two wives, if you read the Hebrew here, you'll see something. It's best translated, if a man has had two wives. All right? In other words, it's not necessarily speaking of polygamous relationships as much as sequential relationships here. If a man has had two wives and he loves one but not the other, both bear him sons, but the firstborn is the son of the wife he does not love. So the first wife has a son, and he doesn't love that wife anymore. When he wills his property to his sons, he must not give the rights of the firstborn to the son of the wife he loves, the second wife, in preference to his actual firstborn, the son of the wife he does not love. So the rights of the firstborn pass to the literal firstborn, regardless of how the husband feels about the first wife or the second wife. The rights of the firstborn carry over to the firstborn. When he wills his property to his sons, he must not give the rights of the firstborn to the son of the wife he loves in preference to the actual firstborn, the son of the wife he does not love. He must acknowledge the son of his unloved wife as the firstborn by giving him a double share. That's the right of the firstborn, a double share of all he has. That son is the first sign of his father's strength. The right of the firstborn belongs to him. That's God's command regarding inheritance. If a man who has a stubborn and rebellious son, let's change the subject one more time. Now we're talking about a belligerent, rebellious child, a son. If a man has a stubborn and rebellious son who does not obey his father and mother and will not listen to them when they discipline him, wow, how many households have one of those? Well, in ancient Israel, it's a really bad idea to take that posture if you're the son. Watch this. His father and mother shall take hold of him, bring him to the elders at the gate of his town. Okay, so now we're escalating his behavior to become a community issue by taking him to the leadership of his town. What happens? They shall say to the elders, this son of ours is stubborn and rebellious. He will not obey us. He is a profligate and a drunkard. Okay? Then, look at this. Then all the men of his town shall stone him to death. You must purge the evil from among you. All Israel will hear of it and be afraid. There we have it again in the microcosm. There's judgment for sin. What does God say in the Ten Commandments? I want you to honor your father and mother. All right? This young man in Deuteronomy 21 says, I'm not going to do that. I don't care what you do. Okay, we escalate it to the leadership of the village. The village looks at this as evil, not as, gee, he'll get over it or he has some sort of psychological problem we need to discuss. They don't look at it as anything other than you know what you should do and you refuse to do it. That's evil. That's not excusable. That's evil. So, will you change your ways? Will you reconsider your behavior? Or will you face the consequence of what you're doing? Well, if he doesn't want to comply, he's going to face the death penalty for his rebellious attitude. And God says why. Look at this. You have to get rid of the evil. You cannot tolerate this among yourselves. Zero tolerance policy. And then you see at the end of 21, why? God says, look, this is setting a precedent. This is making an example of the situation so that the rest of those who feel like they might want to be rebellious against their parents will be afraid. They will no longer pursue that path because they have witnessed the consequence. All right, well, if a man guilty of a capital offense is put to death, all right, and his body is hung on a tree. So now we have a guilty capital offense. Maybe it's a murderer, we're not really told, but he's put to death and he's crucified. His body is hung on a tree. All right, you must not leave his body on the tree overnight. Be sure to bury him that same day, because anyone who is hung on a tree is what? Is under God's curse. Where have we heard that before? You must not desecrate the land the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance. Do you see this, verse 23? This is quoted in Galatians in the New Testament. Christ redeemed us from the curse of the law by becoming a curse for us. For it is written, cursed is everyone who is hung on a tree. So, way back to Deuteronomy 23, we see that the requirement is take that dead body off the cross before sunset. What was the motivation for the enemies of Jesus once he was crucified and died on a cross? What did they do? They got his body off that cross before sunset. Now, they were also dealing with the Sabbath. They didn't want to have any of that going on for their great religious holiday celebration. But nonetheless, that principle motivated them to do the same. So, what do we learn today? Well, God is trying to institute order and structure into the civilization of his people as they live in the promised land. They're not going to be in the desert anymore. They're going to be in a place where they're going to stay, at least in theory. And these are the ways God wants them to live. God has very prescribed rules for us as well and how he wants us to live. All summed up in the line, be holy as I am holy. Let's do it today, church. Let's live our lives in a way that honors God. I pray you serve him well. God bless you.
Who is it who for sinners shed his blood, and now for cleansing all can plunge beneath that flood? It's Jesus. But do you know who he is? He's the image of the invisible God, and he's the brightness of his glory, the first, the last, the future, the past.